The morning light of three suns streamed through the tall crystal windows of the Galactic Academy of Sciences. The light created rainbow patterns on the smooth white walls of Lecture Hall 7, where Professor Do-hyun arranged his teaching materials for the day's class. He smiled as he looked at the assignment he had prepared. This would be interesting. Students began floating, walking, and in some cases rolling into the classroom. They came from 50 different planets and represented 30 different species. Some looked almost human, while others seemed to defy the basic rules of biology. The professor watched as they took their seats, each in specially designed chairs that suited their unique body shapes. Hejin, a Centaurian student with silvery skin that sparkled in the morning light, sat in the front row. Unlike many of his classmates who needed special seats, Hejin looked mostly human except for his metallic skin and slightly larger eyes. He took out his data tablet and waited patiently. Next to him, Jinna from Proxima floated a few inches above her chair, her translucent body giving off a soft blue glow. "Good morning, class," Professor Do-hyun said, his voice calm but carrying to every corner of the room. "Today marks the beginning of your final research project for this term." The students straightened up, those who had spines, at least. Final projects were important at the academy. They could make the difference between getting a good placement at a research facility or being stuck monitoring bacteria on some distant moon. "Your assignment," the professor continued, "will focus on a single planet and its dominant species." He waved his hand, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a beautiful blue and green planet, wrapped in swirling white clouds. Several students gasped. One made a sound like bubbling water, which was how its species showed surprise. "Yes," Professor Do-hyun nodded. "This is Earth. Classification: Deathworld. Home to the species known as humans." Hejin raised his hand. "Professor, why are we studying a Deathworld? Surely there are more suitable planets for xenobiology research." The professor smiled. "An excellent question. Can anyone tell me why Earth is classified as a death world?" Jinna's gentle voice floated through the air. "Because it's dangerous, Professor. The gravity is too high, the temperature range is extreme, and the atmosphere contains corrosive oxygen." "Correct, partly," Do-hyun said. "But here's what makes this planet particularly interesting. Despite these conditions, it produced a spacefaring civilization. The humans didn't just survive, they thrived. And now they're out here among the stars with us." A student in the back, whose body was basically a collection of green gas held together by a magnetic field, made a dismissive whistling sound. "But Professor, humans are primitive. They still have physical bodies that can break. They sleep every day and eat solid food. Why study them?" Professor Do-hyun walked to his desk and picked up a small brown object. "This," he said, holding it up, "is what humans call a coffee bean. It contains a substance that would kill many species in this room. Humans. They grind it up, mix it with hot water, and drink it every morning. For pleasure." The class went silent. Even the gaseous students stopped whistling. "Your assignment is this. Working in pairs, you will research Earth and its inhabitants. You will study their biology, their behavior, and most importantly, how they turned what should have been a hostile death trap into a cradle of civilization." Hejin looked at Jinna, and they nodded to each other. They had worked together before and made a good team. Hejin was good with data and analysis, while Jinna had a talent for understanding behavioral patterns. "You have access to the galactic archives for this project," the professor continued. "I want a comprehensive report on why Earth is classified as a death world and how humans have adapted to, or even taken advantage of, these deadly conditions." A student with crystalline skin raised what appeared to be an arm. "Professor, is it safe to study humans? Won't they be aggressive? All death world species are violent." Do-hyun's smile widened. "That's another interesting assumption we'll be examining. Humans can be violent, yes. They can also be incredibly gentle. They keep other animals as pets, showing them affection. They create art. They make music. They're full of contradictions, which makes them fascinating subjects for study. Hejin was already taking notes. This was different from their usual assignments studying gas giant floating organisms or silicon-based life forms. Humans were weird. They lived on a planet that should have killed them, drank poison for fun, and somehow made it to the stars. Professor, Jin-Ah asked, her voice curious. Have you met any humans? I have, Do-hyun replied. I spent a year on Earth as part of my own studies. It was educational. Did you know they have something called weather? Their planet randomly sprays water from the sky. Sometimes this water turns solid and falls as ice. Sometimes the air moves so fast it destroys buildings. And the humans, they mostly just carry on with their day. More guests from the class. Even Hejin felt his silvery skin ripple with shock. A planet that randomly attacked its inhabitants with solid water and destructive air. And the locals just accepted it. Your reports will be due in 4 weeks, Professor Do-hyun announced. I expect detailed analysis, not just a list of Earth's deadly features. I want you to understand how humans function in their environment, how they've adapted, and what this tells us about life's potential to thrive in seemingly impossible conditions. After class, Hejin and Jin-Ah stayed behind to discuss their project. Hejin's silvery fingers danced over his data tablet as he pulled up the first files from the galactic archives. Look at this, he said to Jin-Ah, who floated closer to see the screen. Earth has something called plate tectonics. The ground literally splits open sometimes, spewing molten rock. Other times, the ground shakes and buildings fall down. Jin-Ah's blue glow pulsed with interest. And humans built their cities anyway, on ground that might break. Not only that, Hejin continued, scrolling through the data, they built special buildings designed to move with the shaking ground instead of falling down. They turned a deadly problem into an engineering challenge. Fascinating, Jin-Ah whispered. On my planet, we avoid all physical dangers. We evolved to float above the ground to stay safe. But humans, they face danger and find ways to live with it. Professor Do-hyun, who was still at his desk, overheard them. That's exactly the kind of thinking I want to see in your reports, he said. Don't just list the dangers. Understand how humans respond to them, adapt to them, and sometimes even turn them to their advantage. Hejin and Jin-Ah spent the rest of the morning in the Academy's library, surrounded by holographic displays showing Earth data. They watched videos of humans running outside during rain, the water falling from the sky, saw them swimming in huge bodies of water full of other creatures, and observed them living in places where the temperature dropped so low it would kill most species. I think, Hejin said slowly, this might be the most interesting project we've ever had. Jin-Ah's glow brightened in agreement. Yes, but also the most confusing. Everything about Earth seems designed to kill its inhabitants. The gravity is so strong it should crush them. The temperature ranges would freeze or cook most species. Even the plants and animals are aggressive. Look at this thing called a rose. It's beautiful, but it has sharp thorns that can pierce skin. And humans grow them on purpose. For the next 4 weeks, Hejin said, we're going to have to think like humans. Try to understand how they see their world. Maybe then we'll understand why Earth is called a Deathworld, but humans don't seem to notice. As they continued their research, neither of them noticed Professor Do-hyun watching from the library entrance, a satisfied smile on his face. Every year, he assigned this project. Every year, he watched as his students discovered that their own definitions of impossible and deadly needed to be reconsidered. Humans weren't primitive survivors of a harsh world. They were the product of that world, shaped by its challenges into something unique in the galaxy. The professor touched a small metal badge on his collar, a gift from a human friend. It was shaped like something called a snowflake, a tiny crystal of frozen water that fell from Earth's sky. To most species, the idea of water turning solid and falling from above was terrifying. To humans, it was so beautiful they made jewelry copying its shape. Yes, this would be a very interesting 4 weeks. Professor Do-hyun couldn't wait to see what his students would discover about the remarkable species that called the Deathworld their home. The galactic archives were housed in a massive crystal dome that changed color based on the time of day. As Hejin and Jinna entered the building early the next morning, the dome glowed a soft orange, matching the rising of the 3 suns. They found an empty study pod, a small, quiet room with advanced holographic displays. Hejin sat in a comfortable chair, while Jinna floated nearby, her blue glow reflecting off the pod's white walls. "Where should we start?" Jinna asked, her voice gentle in the quiet space. Hejin touched the control panel, and multiple screens appeared in the air around them. "Let's begin with basic Earth data. We need to understand exactly why it's classified as a death world." The first screen filled with numbers and charts. Hejin's silvery skin rippled with surprise as he read. "Look at this temperature range. Earth's surface temperature goes from -40 degrees to +50 degrees. Most planets with intelligent life stay within a 10-degree range." Jinna moved closer to the screen, her translucent form pulsing with interest. "And humans can survive in all these temperatures." "Not just survive," Hejin said, scrolling through more data. "They live in these places. They build homes in deserts where the temperature burns during the day and freezes at night. They build cities in places where frozen water falls from the sky for months at a time." "How do they do it?" Hejin pulled up another screen. "They change their outer covering. Look at this. They make artificial skins from plant and animal materials. They call it clothing. They have different types for different temperatures." Jinna's glow brightened with excitement. "That's so clever. Instead of evolving different bodies for different places, they made removable body parts." As they dug deeper into the data, more surprises emerged. Hejin found information about Earth's gravity, which was much stronger than most inhabited planets. "Their bones are incredibly dense," he explained, "and they have strong muscles just to stand up. Most species would be crushed. But that makes them very strong in normal gravity," Jinna noted. "Is that why they move so easily when they travel to other planets?" "Yes, and look at this." Hejin brought up a new screen showing human athletic activities. "They use their planet's high gravity to become stronger on purpose. They lift heavy objects over and over. They run long distances. They jump from high places into water for fun. They call it sports and exercise." Jinna watched the videos with growing amazement. "They seem to enjoy making things harder for themselves. On my planet, we try to make everything easier and safer." "Speaking of safe," Hejin said, pulling up another screen, "look at Earth's wildlife data." Both students stared at the numbers in silence. Finally, Jinna spoke. 8 million different species, living on the same planet. And humans evolved while sharing their planet with huge predators. Hejin added, "Look at these creatures called tigers and bears. They're massive meat eaters that could easily kill humans. And some of them still exist. How did humans survive? They used their minds." Hejin showed more data. "They made tools. They learned to control fire. Yes, actual fire, the burning kind. They formed groups for protection. And eventually, they became so successful that they became the most dangerous predators on their planet." Jinna floated thoughtfully. "But they didn't kill all the other predators. The data shows they now protect many dangerous species from extinction. Why would they do that?" "I don't understand either," Hejin admitted. "They turned some predators into pets, animals they keep in their homes for companionship. Look at these dogs. They were once wolves, dangerous pack hunters. Humans somehow made them friendly." They spent the next few hours studying Earth's geological features. The planet's surface was broken into massive pieces that moved constantly, causing earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Huge bodies of water covered most of the planet, and these waters moved in massive waves that could destroy coastal settlements. The air moves too, Jin-Ah noticed, studying weather patterns, sometimes so fast it picks up buildings, and humans still build in these places. They build stronger buildings, He-Jin explained. They study the patterns of these storms. They make prediction systems. Instead of avoiding danger, they learn to live with it. Their research was interrupted by a soft chime, indicating that someone wanted to enter their study pod. It was Professor Do-hyun. "How is your research progressing?" he asked, looking at the multiple screens of Earth data floating around the room. "Professor," He-Jin said, "I don't understand something. Humans face so many dangers on their planet, but instead of trying to eliminate these dangers or leave for safer worlds, they adapt to them. Sometimes they even seem to enjoy dangerous things. Why?" Professor Do-hyun smiled. "Perhaps that's exactly what you should focus on in your research. Why do humans approach danger differently from other species?" Jin-Ah's glow pulsed thoughtfully. "We've noticed they turn problems into opportunities. When the ground shakes, they don't just build stronger buildings. They study the shaking to understand their planet better. When predators threaten them, they don't just fight back. They learn about the predators and sometimes even make them into friends." "Excellent observation," the professor said. "Keep following that line of thinking. And don't forget to look into their social structures. How do they organize themselves to face these challenges?" After the professor left, He-Jin pulled up data about human societies. "This is interesting," he said. "They divide into small groups, but they can quickly form larger groups when needed. Like when there's a disaster, something they call emergency response teams." Jin-Ah studied the information. They help each other, even strangers. When dangerous weather comes, they warn everyone, not just their own group. They send help to places hit by earthquakes or storms, even if those places are far away. "And look at this," He-Jin added, showing more data. "They have special humans who run toward danger instead of away from it. Firefighters who go into burning buildings. Police who face dangerous criminals. Doctors who touch sick people to make them better." "But why?" Jin-Ah wondered. "Why take such risks?" "Maybe." He-Jin paused, thinking. Maybe living on a dangerous planet taught them that they're stronger together, that helping others helps everyone survive. They spent the rest of the day studying human responses to various dangers. They learned about weather warning systems, earthquake-resistant buildings, and flood control methods. They studied how humans adapted to live in frozen lands and burning deserts. They watched videos of humans climbing mountains, diving into oceans, and even jumping out of flying vehicles with special cloth wings they called parachutes. "I think I'm starting to understand," Jin-Ah said as they prepared to leave the archives. "Humans don't just survive on their death world. They learn from it. Every danger teaches them something new." He-Jin nodded, his silvery skin reflecting the now purple light of the archives dome. "They turn obstacles into opportunities, but there's still so much we don't understand. Tomorrow, let's look into their entertainment. I want to know why they do dangerous things for fun." As they left the archives, both students felt changed by what they had learned. Their own world suddenly seemed very simple and safe compared to Earth. But instead of feeling superior, they felt a growing respect for the species that had turned a Deathworld into their home. Neither of them noticed Professor Do-hyun watching them leave. He touched the snowflake badge on his collar and smiled. His students were beginning to understand that what made Earth a Deathworld wasn't just its dangerous conditions. It was the way these conditions had shaped its inhabitants into something unique in the galaxy, a species that didn't just face danger, but learned from it, adapted to it, and sometimes even sought it out. Tomorrow, they would learn even more surprising things about humans. But for now, they had plenty to think about. As they walked and floated back to their dormitories, both students found themselves looking up at the night sky, wondering which distant star was Earth's sun and marveling at the creatures who called that dangerous world their home. On the third day of their research, He-Jin and Jin-Ah made a discovery that changed everything they thought they knew about humans. They were in their usual study pod at the archives, reviewing data about human entertainment, when they found something remarkable. "This can't be right," He-Jin said, his silvery skin rippling with disbelief. "Jin-Ah, look at this." Jin-Ah floated closer to the screen, her blue glow dimming slightly as she processed what she was seeing. "Are they running? For no reason." The screen showed something humans called a marathon. Thousands of humans were running together for 42.2 kilometers. They weren't running from danger. They weren't chasing food. They were running because they wanted to. "They call it a sport," He-Jin explained, reading through the data. "They do this all over their planet. Some humans run even longer distances. There's something called an ultramarathon that can be hundreds of kilometers long." "But why?" Jin-Ah's glow pulsed with confusion. "Why waste energy like this?" He-Jin pulled up more data. "It seems they do it to challenge themselves, to prove they can. And look at this, they have many activities like this. They climb frozen mountains, dive deep into oceans, jump out of flying vehicles." "They do what?" Jin-Ah moved even closer to the screen. "It's called skydiving. They go up very high in a vehicle, then jump out. They fall through the air on purpose, using a device called a parachute to land safely." Professor Do-hyun chose that moment to enter their study pod. He saw what they were watching and smiled. "Ah, you've discovered human recreational activities." "Professor," Jin-Ah said, her voice filled with confusion, "why do humans purposely do dangerous things? We've been studying their survival adaptations, but this seems like the opposite of survival behavior." The professor sat down in one of the empty chairs. "What do you think? You've been studying Earth and humans for several days now. Why might a species choose to face danger when they don't have to?" He-Jin thought for a moment, his silvery fingers tapping on the control panel. Maybe it's because of their environment. They evolved on a planet that constantly challenged them. Perhaps they learned to see challenges as opportunities rather than threats." "Good thinking." Professor Do-hyun nodded. "What else have you discovered about human recreation?" Jin-Ah brought up another screen. "They also consume substances that should be toxic. Look at this hot sauce. It contains capsaicin, which causes pain sensations. Yet they add it to their food on purpose. And this coffee you showed us in class," He-Jin added. "We've found that humans drink it every day. They even have places called coffee shops where they gather specifically to consume this toxin." The professor smiled wider. "Have you looked into human social gatherings yet?" The two students shook their heads. Jin-Ah's entire body swayed, which was how her species showed the same gesture. "You might find it interesting," Do-hyun suggested, "especially how they celebrate." After the professor left, He-Jin and Jin-Ah began researching human social activities. What they found was equally surprising. They gather in large groups to watch others engage in dangerous activities. He-Jin noted, "These sports stadiums hold thousands of humans who watch others run into each other, throw things at high speeds, or compete to move faster than their opponents." "And look at this," Jin-Ah said. "They have places called amusement parks where they ride machines designed to simulate dangerous situations. Fast movements, sudden drops, spinning at high speeds, all things that should trigger fear responses. But they do it for enjoyment. They bring their children to these places." He-Jin pulled up more data about human children. Speaking of children, their young seem to be naturally drawn to risky behavior. They climb things, jump from heights, run fast, and explore dangerous places. And instead of stopping this behavior completely, adult humans try to guide it into safer forms. "They call it play," Jin-Ah observed. "It seems to be how their young learn to handle danger. But even adult humans continue to play in dangerous ways." They spent the next few hours studying human entertainment and celebrations. They learned about activities called roller coasters, bungee jumping, and whitewater rafting, all designed to create controlled danger situations that humans would pay money to experience. "I think I understand something," Jinnah said after a while. "Humans don't just adapt to danger. They practice dealing with it. Even when they're safe, they create small dangers to keep their skills sharp." Jin nodded, bringing up more data. "And look at how they celebrate. They use explosives called fireworks that create loud noises and bright lights. They have parties where they dance for hours, pushing their bodies to physical limits. They even have celebrations where they purposely stay awake all night. Their entertainment seems designed to push their limits," Jinnah noted. "Physical limits, mental limits, even their fear limits. No wonder they've survived on a Deathworld. They never stop practicing their survival skills." As they continued their research, they discovered something else interesting about human recreation. It often involved cooperation and trust. "Look at this activity called rock climbing," Jin said. "One human climbs up a dangerous cliff, while another human holds a safety rope. They trust their life to each other." "And this scuba diving. Humans go deep underwater in pairs, watching out for each other's safety." Jinnah's glow brightened with understanding. "So their recreational activities don't just practice physical skills. They practice working together, trusting each other, and keeping each other safe." "Exactly," Jin exclaimed. "Even in their celebrations, they show this pattern. They gather in groups, share food and drinks that might be dangerous to other species, and create situations where they need to look out for each other." They were so engrossed in their research that they almost missed dinner time. As they prepared to leave the archives, Jinnah made one more observation. "Jin," she said, "look at this pattern. When humans discover something dangerous, they don't just find ways to survive it. They study it, understand it, and often find ways to enjoy it. They turn the deadly capsaicin into spicy food. They turn the dangerous coffee bean into a popular drink. They even turned their planet's crushing gravity into a way to make themselves stronger through exercise." Jin's silvery skin shimmered with excitement. "You're right. And they share these discoveries with each other. They don't keep survival skills secret. They teach them openly, turn them into sports and games, and celebrate them together." As they left the archives, both students felt they were finally beginning to understand why Earth was called a Deathworld. It wasn't just because of its dangerous conditions. It was because those conditions had created a species that treated danger differently from any other known civilization. Professor Do-hyun watched them leave from his office window. He touched his snowflake badge and remembered his own first winter on Earth, when his human friends had taught him to ski, sliding down a frozen mountain on purpose, for fun. At the time, he thought they were crazy. Now he understood they were simply being human. Tomorrow, Jin and Jinnah would continue their research, looking deeper into human society and culture. But today they had learned something crucial. On Earth, the line between danger and opportunity was often just a matter of perspective, and humans, it seemed, had mastered the art of crossing that line. The presentation day arrived at the Galactic Academy of Sciences. Lecture Hall 7 was filled with students, professors, and even some visiting scientists who had heard about the interesting research projects on Earth. The morning light from the three suns created rainbow patterns on the walls, just as it had done on the day Professor Do-hyun first assigned the project. Jin and Jinnah waited nervously outside the hall. They had prepared their presentation carefully, but what they had discovered about humans was so surprising that they worried others might not believe them. "Are you ready?" Jin asked, his silvery skin reflecting his nervous energy. Jinnah's blue glow pulsed steadily. "Yes, we have evidence for everything. Professor Do-hyun helped us verify all our findings." They entered the lecture hall when their names were called. Jin walked to the front while Jinnah floated beside him. The room was silent as they prepared their presentation materials. "Today," Jin began, We will explain why Earth is classified as a death world. But more importantly, we will show how its inhabitants have turned deadly conditions into advantages. Jinnah activated the first holographic display. It showed Earth's basic data, its strong gravity, extreme temperatures, and dangerous weather patterns. These conditions would kill most species, she explained. But humans didn't just survive them. They learned from them. Jin touched a control, and the display changed to show human athletes. Look at how humans use their planet's high gravity. They lift heavy objects to make their bodies stronger. They run long distances to build endurance. What would crush other species has made humans physically powerful. The audience watched in silence as videos played showing humans exercising, running marathons, and climbing mountains. One crystalline student made a cracking sound, their species' way of showing shock. But physical adaptation is just the beginning. Jinnah continued. Humans have learned to survive in all of Earth's environments. The display showed humans living in frozen lands, hot deserts, dense forests, and even on small islands surrounded by vast oceans. They use their intelligence to adapt, Jin explained. When it's cold, they don't wait for evolution to give them fur. They make artificial coverings called clothes. When it's hot, they create cooling systems. When the ground shakes, they build flexible buildings that move with it instead of breaking. Professor Do-hyun watched from his seat, nodding slightly as his students presented their findings. He could see the surprise and disbelief on many faces in the audience. Jinnah moved to the next part of their presentation. Humans don't just survive dangers. They study them, understand them, and often turn them into opportunities. The display showed examples: weather monitoring systems, earthquake detection networks, and flood control methods. They even turned dangerous substances into things they enjoy. Jin added. He held up a small red object. This is what humans call a chili pepper. It contains capsaicin, a substance that causes pain. Most species would avoid it. Humans add it to their food because they enjoy the sensation. A gasp went through the audience. The idea of deliberately consuming pain-causing substances seemed impossible to comprehend. Their ability to adapt goes beyond physical challenges, Jinnah continued. The display changed to show human social structures. Humans form strong bonds with each other. They work together to face dangers. They teach their young to handle dangerous situations through activities they call play. Jin touched the control again, and the display showed human children in playgrounds. Look at how they practice climbing, jumping, and running from an early age. They learn to face fear, handle pain, and help each other. But most surprisingly, Jinnah said, her glow brightening with excitement, humans have turned many dangerous activities into entertainment. The display showed various human sports and recreational activities. They jump from high places with special devices called parachutes, Jin explained. They dive deep into oceans to see what lives there. They climb frozen mountains just to reach the top. They do these things not because they must, but because they want to challenge themselves. The audience watched in amazement as videos played showing humans engaging in various extreme sports. Some students made sounds of disbelief or shock. We believe, Jinnah continued, that living on a death world has shaped humans in unique ways. They don't see danger as something to always avoid. They see it as something to understand, adapt to, and sometimes even enjoy. Jin nodded in agreement. Their planet's harsh conditions haven't weakened them. Instead, these challenges have made humans stronger, more adaptable, and more innovative than they might have been on a safer world. The presentation continued with more examples of human adaptation and innovation. They showed how humans had learned to predict dangerous weather, control fire, and even harness their planet's violent forces to create energy. Humans have a saying, Jinnah said, displaying the words in the air. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. This seems to be more than just words to them. It's how they live. As they neared the end of their presentation, Jin made their final point. Earth is called a deathworld because its conditions are deadly to most species. But these same conditions have created a species that doesn't just survive. They thrive on challenges. They seek out new difficulties to overcome. They help each other face dangers. They turn deadly situations into opportunities for growth. Jinnah's glow pulsed with conviction as she concluded, "Perhaps we need to reconsider what makes a world deadly. Is it the dangerous conditions, or is it the lack of challenges that would prevent a species from reaching its full potential?" The lecture hall was silent for a moment after they finished. Then Professor Do-hyun stood up and began to applaud, a human gesture he had learned during his time on Earth. Soon, the whole audience joined in, expressing appreciation in their various ways, flashing lights, emanating pleasant scents, or making musical tones. Hajin and Jinnah had succeeded in showing their fellow students something remarkable about the species from Earth. They had helped others understand that what made humans unique wasn't just their ability to survive on a death world, but their capacity to learn from it, adapt to it, and even find joy in its challenges. As they left the stage, Professor Do-hyun touched his snowflake badge and smiled. His students had learned exactly what he hoped they would, that sometimes the most remarkable things in the universe aren't the most powerful or the most advanced, but those that have learned to turn adversity into advantage. The presentation had changed how their fellow students saw humans. No longer did they seem primitive or simple. Instead, they appeared as something far more interesting, a species that had been shaped by their dangerous world into something unique in the galaxy. After the presentations were finished, Professor Do-hyun invited his students to experience something unique. He had set up a special room in the Academy's Cultural Exchange Center. The room was designed to let students safely try some human experiences. "Today," he announced to the class, "we will do more than just study humans. We will try to understand them by experiencing a small part of their world." Hajin and Jinnah stood at the front of the group, eager to see what their professor had planned. Their successful presentation had made them even more curious about humans. The professor held up a small brown cup. "This contains something humans drink every morning. It's called hot chocolate. Unlike coffee, which we discussed earlier, this is mild enough for most species to try safely." The students looked at each other nervously. The idea of consuming a human beverage was both exciting and frightening. Hot chocolate contains small amounts of caffeine and theobromine, Professor Do-hyun explained. "These are mild toxins, but in these small amounts, they are safe for most of us. Humans drink this for pleasure and comfort." Hajin stepped forward first. His silvery hands took the cup carefully. He looked at the dark brown liquid, then took a small sip. His eyes widened. "It's warm," he said, surprised. "And sweet, but also bitter, and it makes my mouth feel different." His silvery skin rippled with new sensations. Jinnah floated closer. "May I try?" The professor handed her a special container designed for her species form. She absorbed a small amount through her translucent surface. Her blue glow pulsed brightly. "Oh, I understand now. Humans don't just tolerate these substances. They create interesting combinations of sensations. It's not just about survival. It's about experience." Other students began to try the hot chocolate, each reacting in their own way. The crystalline student made pleasant chiming sounds. The gaseous student changed color briefly to a warm brown. "This is just one small example," Professor Do-hyun said, "of how humans turn potentially dangerous things into sources of pleasure and comfort. But there's more to show you." He led them to another part of the room where several screens showed Earth's weather patterns. The screens were connected to sensory simulators that let students safely experience mild versions of Earth's conditions. "This is what humans call rain," he said, activating one simulator. Small drops of water fell in a contained area. On Earth, water regularly falls from the sky. Most species would find this terrifying. Humans write poetry about it. The students took turns standing under the simulated rain. Hajin let the drops fall on his silvery skin, watching how they rolled off. "It's like thousands of tiny touches," he said wonderingly. I thought it would be unpleasant, but it's fascinating. Jinnah floated through the rain, her form creating small rainbows as the water passed through her. No wonder humans don't fear it. It's like their planet is interacting with them directly. Professor Do-hyun moved to another simulator. This creates what humans call a breeze, gentle moving air. He activated it, and the students felt the soft movement of air around them. On Earth, he explained, the air moves constantly, sometimes gently like this, sometimes with enough force to move buildings. Humans learn to read these movements. They use them for energy. They even play in strong winds. One by one, the students experienced different Earth conditions, always in safe, controlled amounts. They felt the warmth of simulated sunlight, the cool touch of artificial snow, and the gentle vibration of a mild simulated earthquake. Now you begin to understand, Professor Do-hyun said. Earth isn't just a place of danger. It's a place of constant change and interaction. Humans don't just survive these conditions. They are shaped by them. They learn from them. And they find beauty in them. Hae-jin nodded, still holding his cup of hot chocolate. Their dangers have made them adaptable. They don't just face challenges. They embrace them. And they share them, Jinnah added, her glow pulsing gently. Look how they make drinks like this hot chocolate, so others can experience their world safely. They want to share their experiences, not just survive them. Professor Do-hyun touched his snowflake badge. When I first visited Earth, he told them, I was terrified. Everything seemed dangerous. But humans showed me how to see their world differently. They taught me to ski, to slide down snow-covered mountains on purpose. They showed me how to swim in their oceans. They even convinced me to try something called a roller coaster. The students listened intently as their professor continued. At first, I thought they were crazy. Why would anyone choose to do these dangerous things? But then I understood. Humans don't see these activities as just dangerous. They see them as opportunities to feel fully alive. As the day ended, the students had gained more than just knowledge about Earth and humans. They had gained a new perspective on what it meant to be alive in a dangerous universe. Perhaps, Hae-jin said as they prepared to leave, we should stop calling Earth a death world. Maybe we should call it a learning world, or a growing world. Jinnah's glow brightened in agreement. Yes, it's not just about the dangers. It's about how those dangers shaped a species that never stops learning, never stops adapting, and never stops sharing what they've learned. Professor Do-hyun smiled at his students. They had learned the most important lesson of all, that understanding other species wasn't just about studying their biology or their technology. It was about understanding how their world had shaped them, and how they had learned to shape their world in return. As the students left the Cultural Exchange Center, many of them were still holding their cups of hot chocolate. They had taken the first small step toward understanding humans, not just studying them, but experiencing a tiny part of their world. The professor watched them leave, touching his snowflake badge one last time. He remembered his human friend who had given it to him, saying, sometimes the most beautiful things come from the harshest conditions. Now his students understood what that meant. Earth would always be classified as a death world in the galactic database. But now, these students would know that this classification told only part of the story. The true story wasn't about death at all. It was about how the challenges of their world had helped humans become one of the most remarkable species in the galaxy. And perhaps, the professor thought, that was the greatest lesson of all. That sometimes the most incredible things in the universe come not from perfect conditions, but from learning to thrive in imperfect ones.